Okay, so let's get started. So depends on the project, depends on the processes. At initial level, we decide which type of you can say which type of code we need to write. For example, if you see here in this new option, we have sequence, flowchart, state machines, forms, and there are a lot of options available here. Right. So today we will see what is the sequence, what is the flowchart, and depends on that which activity we can do. Okay, so first we will see what is the sequence. So sequence, if you see, if I click on that sequence, I got one pop-up like new sequence, create a new sequence workflow, and this is my location, right? This is the existing location. Okay, so I'll just name this sequence as demo underscore sequence 1. Okay, so sequence is nothing but, if I want to write the definition of the sequence, so sequence is nothing but a line of a code, it's a simple sequence. You can just consider it's a simple line of a code, right? For example, if I'll write this one, okay, I can write this, I can execute this single code within a single sequence, and inside this main sequence I can include that sequence. If you see here, so this is sequence 2. If I have added sequence 1 and sequence 2, or you can say demo underscore sequence dot xml as well, right? So I can create multiple sequences, right? For example, if I'll add here like sequence, now sequence 1, or you can say sequence 1 2, if I'll create this sequence, now that sequence 1 2, see this sequence 1 2 has been created, sequence 1 2 dot xml file. So this is the different XAML files, XAML files, similar like this main.xml. Similar like this, we can create multiple XML files, right, where we can write our code, right? Main.xml file, if you see in this XAML also we have variables, arguments, and we can use these activities inside this main.xml file. So similar way, here also each and every sequence which we have created, we have this variable arguments, and we can create this we can use these activities and we can write the code here, right? So we can create multiple sequences. Sequence is nothing but a line of a code, or you can say set of a code, right? For example, this is my main sequence. If I want to execute some code here, right, if I want to execute the code here, for example, here inside this is my main sequence. This is also, you can say, one single sequence. If you see here, sequence name is equal to main sequence, execute a set of child activities according to a single defined order, right? Now for example, I'll just use one more sequence inside this sequence, and I'll just make this sequence name as a for example, I want to put some logic like addition logic here. Okay, so addition logic here, right? Addition logic, right? I'll just make this sequence name as addition logic. Sure, I can, whatever logic I want to write, whatever code I want to write, I can simply write inside this addition logic. As I simply inside this right line, I'll simply use this is my addition program, right? This is my addition logic. Now here I can put as much as or as many as activities, right? This is not fixed, or this is not a standardized. Within a single sequence I can only use this much of activities. I can use as many as activities. Its execution is like it executes in a waterfall module. Waterfall modules means if I'll execute this program first, this sequence will gets execute, then another sequence gets execute. For example, sequence 1, or you can say addition logic. If I'll write one more sequence here, like this is, for example, this is my another sequence. Okay, if I'll put one more sequence here after this addition logic, again I'll just put here. Now I'll just make this name as a sub sequence, or you can say subtraction. Okay, subtraction. I'll just make subtraction logic, right? Again, if I can put the whole logic inside the subtraction logic. Okay, now as of now I'll just use, for example, this is right? This is my this is subtraction, okay, subtraction logic. Okay, so that means I have created two logic here. This is my main sequence, one is my addition logic, right, and one is the sequential logic, or you can say subtraction logic. And if you see this arrow, this means when I execute this, okay, first this first sequence which have like addition logic sequence will gets executed, and later subtraction logic gets executes. Okay, waterfall in this way, like waterfall one by one. Okay, now if you see here, this is my addition logic and subtraction logic executing, or this is my subtraction logic. Okay, so here I can put, as I said, I can put as many as conditions here. For example, if I want to use something, so I can use, I'll just take one more you can say message box, or you can say I'll take one more flowchart. That means I can use many activities inside a single sequence, right? And one more thing which we need to consider, or which we need to note it down here, whichever or whenever we create a sequence, we can write some heading for that sequence. Okay, why this is important? Now for example, if we create a big program here, right, and we put that code in the production, right, and while running any bot, if we got any exception, right, so at what step we got that exception, so with help of this you can say additional logic heading, we know at this step we are getting the issue, or we are getting the error. Okay, so this is a good practice. Whenever you used anything, like for example sequence or any activity, we can put a particular caption, or we can put a particular heading on that particular sequence. Okay, and one more thing, for example, this is a here we are putting the heading of that sequence. The same way, if you right click and we have an annotation as well. So what do you mean by this annotation? Annotation means if I'll add this annotation, you will have one you can say just pop-up like window. Here we can describe that sequence. Now for example, here I have just mentioned like this sequence, right, this sequence is used, or this sequence is mentioned the logic of the addition, right, or you can put anything as per your business logic. Okay, and just click on that button. So whenever anyone, or for example if I'll open any code, it's directly mentioned, the sequence is mentioned the logic of the addition, right? So this is a standard practice when we create a live projects. Okay, so simple, right click on this, okay, and you just put one annotation here. Okay, we have show all annotation, hide all annotation, delete all annotations. We can delete all annotation, we can hide all annotations, and we have show all annotation as well, right? So sequence is nothing but a small code which we write in a sequence. This is a sequence. Okay, one more thing, we have flow charts. Okay, if we write, or if you click on this new, we have this flow chart option as well. So what do you mean by this flow chart, and what is the main difference between you can say flow chart and sequence? Now for example here, what I need to do, for example I am creating some variables here. Okay, for example var int 32, or for example var int 2. Okay, here also I have used integer 32, right? This is my main sequence. Here also I'll used main sequence. Okay, now inside this main sequence I have created two variables, var int and var int 2. Fine. Now for example, now this is my main. Now what I need to do, and we have the sequence one as well. If I want to pass these two variables, or this two variables value from this main to this sequence, right, then I need to use arguments over there. We will see arguments in the next session, right? So what I need to do, if I want to send a particular value, right, I want to send a particular value from main.xml file to, for example, this sequence 1, or you can say sequence 12 or sequence 2, then what I need to do, I need to send that value in a different way through argument we can pass, right? But in now we can use, you can say, flowchart. Okay, now what I'll do, I'll just click on the flowchart, okay, and I'll just mention flowchart underscore demo, okay, and I'll simply click on this create. Now if you see here, we have the flowchart underscore demo, and you will see here we have the start option. Okay, now again we'll take the same example. For example, now I'll take one you can say sequence here. Okay, I'll take one sequence, right? This is my one sequence. Again I'll take one more sequence here, same example we'll take. Okay, and now for example this sequence, I'll just name this sequence as a addition logic. I'll just make addition logic, and I'll make this sequence name as a subtraction logic. Out, and inside this I can put anything. Okay, if I'll put right line or message box, or I can put the whole logic itself. Okay, I am addition. For a time being I'll just mention I am addition, and here I'll just use I am subtraction. Okay, inside this right line I'll use I am subtraction, right? Now for example, at earlier example which we have seen, in the main we have this addition logic and the subtraction logic. When we execute this, first addition logic gets execute and later subtraction logic will execute. As I said, this is execution will happen in a waterfall way, waterfall, you know, waterfall, straight one by one. Okay, but we have one advantage in this flow chart. We can see flow chart, flow of my execution, flow chart. We can decide, okay, with help of this flow chart we can decide the execution flow. For example, if I want to execute this addition logic first, and later if I want to execute this subtraction logic, we can do that as well. Vice versa, for example, if I want to execute this subtraction logic first, okay, and then if I want to execute this, you know, addition logic, then also we can execute. In short, we can give a execution path in a flowchart. We can decide a flow, right? For bullet point, I'll just mention flow chart. We can decide the flow of execution. This is the very you can say useful concept in the flowchart, right? If you want to automate a small project, so within this flowchart we can you know, code whole the project. Okay, this is the one advantage. One more advantage we have in the flowchart, so let's see what is that advantage. Now for example, as I said, now for example we have two variables in var int and var2. Okay, and if I want to pass this two variable from this main to, for example, any you can say sequence 1, sequence 12 or sequence 2, so I can pass that variable through arguments. Okay, but here now again, for example, we have variables, like for example we have multiple variables, var, right, var int 1, okay, or again var int 2, right, int, again for example I have used var int 3 string. Okay, and here instead of this I just choose flow chart underscore demo. That means this is my main scope of my project. Okay, flowchart underscore demo, this is my flowchart underscore demo, right? Now this variable, if I'll create this variable and I have just given the scope of this flowchart as a flowchart underscore demo, now whichever project or whichever activity I have used here, now for example if I'll use this activity, for example the sequence 1, okay, right, sequence 1, for example the sequence 12, okay, and again for example this sequence 2, right? Now here I can directly access these three variables. Why so? Because I am inside this flowchart, right? Now for example, in the sequence one I need to use this variable, for example this one, right? uh, Variable one, what I need to do, I need to simply pass that variable inside the sequence one. Okay, I need to pass this variable inside the sequence 2, I need to pass this variable inside the sequence 12. So in short, whichever variable I have used, I have created in this workflow, so that variable I can directly use inside the flowchart, right? So two main advantages we can used, or two main advantages we have when we used flowchart. Okay, so flowchart, we can give the execution path when we use flowchart. So it, for example, here again, now this is my one flowchart, we have these sequences. Again, for example, if I want to execute something like this, right, so again I'll provide this flowchart in this way. See, in this way, it's up to us, it's up to the our business logic, or it's up to the business case, how we can decide our execution of the code. Okay, so with help of this flowchart we can decide the execution of the flow. Okay, so what is the main difference between the sequence and the flowchart? Sequence executes the flow in a waterfall way. First sequence get execute first, and then second sequence will execute later on. But in the flowchart, it's up to us, we can provide the flow of the execution of the code, right? That is the main difference between sequence and the flowchart. And the second thing, when we use sequence, so inside this sequence I can use flowcharts as well. It's not key when we used sequence, so then only we can use a sequence only. So vice versa, we can use flowchart as well, right? Here I can use the flowchart, right? Again, if I want to use sequence, then again I can use sequence, right? It's not like when I use sequence, so then I need to use only the sequence only. I can use sequence, I can use flowchart, again I can use sequence. Inside this sequence also I can use flowchart, like that. Okay, and here also in this first you can say flowchart, I can use sequence as I already used here, right? So again, if I want to use another flowchart, that also I can use. Okay, so vice versa, it's not any standard or any fixed condition where we can use the sequence or where you can use flowchart only. It's up to the business logic, or it's up to the development skills, it's or these standards of the code, we can use the flowchart and the sequence. Okay, as I said, vice versa, where we can use inside the sequence we can use flowchart, inside the flowchart we can use sequence. So sequence, where we can use sequence everywhere. As I said, sequence is nothing but it's a simple you can say line of a code. Okay, got it? So this is the difference, this is the difference between sequence and the flowchart. Okay.